The Book of Ezra focuses on the return of the Jewish exiles from Babylon and the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem. It is a story of renewal and restoration, highlighting the role of God's providence and the obedience of His people in the face of opposition. The book also emphasizes the importance of spiritual reform as the returning exiles commit to following God's laws once more. Chapters 1-2. The Return of the Exiles. Cyrus's Decree. Chapter 1. The book begins with the Persian king, Cyrus, issuing a decree allowing the Jewish exiles in Babylon to return to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple. This fulfills the prophecy of Jeremiah, showing how God moves through world events to accomplish His will. The list of returning exiles. Chapter 2. A detailed list of the Jewish families and individuals who return from exile is given. Around 50,000 people return, including priests, Levites, and temple servants. Chapters 3-6. Rebuilding the temple. Rebuilding the altar and temple foundations. Chapter 3. Once the exiles return to Jerusalem, they rebuild the altar and begin offering sacrifices again. They also lay the foundation of the new temple. There is a mix of joy and weeping among the people. Joy from those who had never seen the original temple, and weeping from those who remember the grandeur of Solomon's temple. Opposition and halt in construction. Chapter 4. As the Jews rebuild the temple, they face opposition from the surrounding nations, who try to stop the work. The construction comes to a halt for several years due to this interference. The prophets, Haggai and Zechariah. Chapter 5. Prophets Haggai and Zechariah encourage the people to continue rebuilding the temple despite the opposition. The Persian authorities investigate the matter and confirm that King Cyrus did indeed authorize the rebuilding. Completion of the temple. Chapter 6. Under the leadership of Zerubbabel and Jeshua, and with the support of the Persian king Darius, the temple is finally completed. The people celebrate the Passover with great joy, signifying a renewed commitment to God. Chapters 7-10. Ezra's leadership and spiritual reform. Ezra's arrival in Jerusalem. Chapter 7. Ezra, a priest and scribe skilled in the law of Moses, arrives in Jerusalem about 60 years after the completion of the temple. He has been commissioned by King Artaxerxes of Persia to lead a spiritual revival among the people and teach them the law of God. Ezra's prayer and the people's repentance. Chapter 8. Before starting his mission, Ezra leads a group of more exiles to Jerusalem, gathering provisions and praying for protection on their journey. When they arrive, Ezra is deeply disturbed to learn that many of the Jewish people, including the leaders, have married foreign women, which was against God's law. Ezra's call for repentance. Chapter 9. Ezra responds by praying a powerful prayer of confession, acknowledging the people's sin and God's mercy in allowing them to return from exile. Ezra calls the people to repentance and to renew their commitment to God's covenant. The people's response. Chapter 10. The people agree to separate from their foreign wives and recommit to living according to God's law. This act of repentance marks a spiritual turning point for the Jewish community in Jerusalem. Key themes and lessons. God's providence. The return of the exiles and the rebuilding of the temple show God's hand in history. Even foreign kings like Cyrus and Darius are used by God to accomplish His purposes. Obedience and restoration. The Jewish people's willingness to obey God and rebuild the temple, despite challenges, reflects their desire for restoration. It is a story of God giving His people a second chance to worship Him rightly. Spiritual reforms. The second half of the book emphasizes the importance of spiritual renewal. Ezra's mission was not just about physical rebuilding, but also about restoring the people's commitment to God's law. Conclusion. The Book of Ezra is a powerful testament to God's faithfulness in bringing his people back from exile and giving them the opportunity to rebuild their community, both physically and spiritually. Despite opposition and setbacks, God's purposes are fulfilled, showing that he is sovereign over all nations and leaders.